41 months. That is how long a single retired export control number moved live cargo. Not a person, not a company. A number, 12 digits, printed on a form that had been legally dead for over 3 years, kept clearing shipments, kept opening bonded warehouses, kept sending restricted American machine tool components across the Pacific to buyers the United States government would never have approved. 41 months, 217 amended licenses, $1.9 billion in dual-use manufacturing technology, routed to a foreign adversary's industrial base. And the entire pipeline, every amended form, every cleared container, every wire transfer through 11 shell accounts, ran through one government desk. One cleared employee, one licensing clerk who understood, better than almost anyone, exactly which numbers nobody was watching. The operation that brought it down was called Quiet Ledger. It did not begin with a surveillance team, a foreign defector walking into an embassy, a wiretap, or a tip from a confidential informant. It began with a junior compliance reviewer at a federal export licensing office, reconciling a quarterly ledger on a Tuesday afternoon, who noticed that a control number appeared twice, and that the second appearance was sitting on a form dated 14 months after the first form had expired. She flagged it. She wrote 3 lines in a comment field. She moved on to the next entry. What those 3 lines started took 14 months, 2 federal agencies, a Title III wiretap, and the largest simultaneous export fraud takedown in over a decade to finish. This is the story of how they found them. To understand what was stolen, and what that word even means in this context, you have to understand what export control numbers actually do. When an American company wants to ship dual-use technology abroad, components with legitimate commercial applications that could also feed a foreign military or weapons program, they apply for an export license. The application is reviewed. If approved, it receives a control number, a unique identifier tied to that specific shipment, that specific buyer, that specific end-use declaration. The number has a shelf life. The license expires. The number dies with it, except when it does not. The reviewer's anomaly, what would eventually become Exhibit 1 in a federal indictment, was this: a shipment of precision CNC grinding components, cleared through a bonded warehouse in the Port of Los Angeles, bore a control number that matched a license issued in 2019. The form it was sitting on was dated 2023. The 2019 license had expired in February of 2020. The number should not have existed on that form. It was, in the language of the indictment, a ghost approval, an old authorization resurrected to make a new, unapproved shipment look like a cleared one anomaly. That was all she had. 3 lines in a comment field, but the comment went to a supervisor. The supervisor escalated, and within 48 hours, that comment had reached a special agent at the FBI's counterintelligence division who would spend the next 14 months thinking about almost nothing else. The special agent, we will call her the analyst, because that is what the case file calls her, pulled the full ledger for the bonded warehouse. It took 3 days. What she found was not one ghost number, it was 9. 9 different expired control numbers, each attached to a cleared shipment, each shipment destined for subsidiaries of the same parent holding company. A logistics conglomerate registered in Delaware, majority owned through a series of nested shell firms tracing, at the 4th remove, to a management consulting group in Guangzhou with documented ties to a procurement network the intelligence community had flagged years earlier as a front for the People's Liberation Army's industrial modernization program. 9 ghost numbers, 9 cleared shipments, and a Delaware holding company that, on paper, looked like a mid-sized American import-export logistics firm with 17 employees and a respectable credit rating. The analyst wrote her first case memo. She called it what it was: a potential supply chain penetration of the federal export licensing system. Origin unknown, mechanism unknown, damage unknown. She requested a full pull on every shipment cleared through that bonded warehouse in the previous 4 years. The request came back, over 6,000 line items. She started reading. 3 weeks into the ledger review, the analyst hit the first wall. The ghost numbers were real, but tracing them backward, identifying who had actually inserted them into the amended license forms, ran directly into the bureaucratic architecture of the export licensing system itself. The forms were processed through a federal licensing office that handled several thousand applications per year. The amendment workflow, the process by which an approved license could be modified after initial approval, involved multiple reviewers, multiple sign-off chains, multiple system touches. Whoever had been inserting the ghost numbers understood that architecture intimately. The amendments were clean, the digital timestamps were plausible, the form fields were filled out correctly. The only thing wrong was the control number itself, and the control number was a field that, under normal quarterly reconciliation, no one was cross-checking against the expiration database in real time. The system was not designed to catch a retired number walking on new legs. It was designed to catch fraud at the point of application, not at the point of amendment. And the amendments were where the ghost numbers lived. 3 months in, the analyst had one strong hypothesis and no confirmed subject. The ghost numbers had to originate from inside the licensing workflow, someone with amendment access, someone who understood which numbers were retired and therefore no longer flagged by the automated screening layer. But the amendment logs showed dozens of authorized users. Any of them could have made the edits. Most of them had made edits. The system could not tell a malicious amendment from a routine one. She needed a different angle. She found it in the metadata. I spent time going through the case file on this, and one detail kept nagging at me. The edits with ghost numbers all fell inside a specific time window, between 11:14 a.m. and 2:47 p.m. on weekdays. Not random, not spread across shifts. A tight band, almost like a lunch hour pattern but longer. That kind of consistency is not a coincidence. That is a habit. The metadata analysis narrowed the field. Of the dozens of authorized amendment users, only 4 had consistent access during that time window. Of those 4, only 1 had amendment access across all 9 of the affected shipment categories. Only 1 had been in the system on the exact dates corresponding to every flagged ghost number insertion over the previous 4 years. A single licensing clerk, 12 years of service, full security clearance, no prior disciplinary record. An employee described by supervisors in routine performance reviews as meticulous, reliable, and unusually fast at processing complex multi-part amendments. Meticulous. That word would appear in the indictment too, in a very different context. The analyst brought the metadata package to a supervisory special agent. The supervisory agent brought it to the United States Attorney's Office. Within 2 weeks, they had a Title III wiretap authorization on the clerk's personal cell phone, a second tap on a burner number that had appeared 3 times in the clerk's call logs, and formal case designation under the codename Quiet Ledger. The case was now an active federal counterintelligence investigation. What the wiretap revealed in the first 30 days reframed the entire scope of the operation. The clerk was not acting alone. The burner number belonged to a commercial trade broker, we will call him the first broker, who operated a small freight forwarding consultancy out of an office park in Northern Virginia. The first broker was in regular contact with a second individual, a corporate compliance consultant, the second broker, whose client list included 4 of the 6 shell firms that appeared in the Delaware holding company's ownership chain. 3 people, a clerk, a broker, and a consultant. Between them, a pipeline that had been running, undetected, for over 3 years. But the wiretap also revealed something the analyst had not expected. The conversations between the clerk and the first broker were not about shipments. They were not about forms or control numbers or amended licenses. They were about payments. Specific, incremental, carefully structured payments. Wire transfers to an account in the name of a home renovation LLC, a company that had never done any home renovation. Direct deposits described as consulting fees for services the clerk had never provided, and 3 cash payments totaling just over $40,000 delivered, based on intercepted calls, in a parking garage in Crystal City, Virginia, on 3 separate occasions. The total paid to the clerk over the 38 months of the operation, $186,000. $186,000. What that money bought, what the clerk actually delivered in exchange for it, was access to the amendment workflow sufficient to reactivate 217 expired export licenses and route-restricted dual-use manufacturing technology to a foreign adversary's procurement network. $1.9 billion in components, $186,000 against $1.9 billion. The most sophisticated export licensing fraud in the federal system in over a decade, and the insider's cut was less than the annual salary of the mid-level federal employees who would eventually prosecute it. Here is the take that will probably get us some pushback. The compensation structure itself is an indictment of how we assess insider threat risk. Behavioral threat programs are calibrated to flag lifestyle inflation, sudden luxury purchases, unexplained travel, obvious signs of outside income. $186,000 spread across 38 months, partially structured as consulting fees, partially as cash, partially through an LLC. That is not lifestyle inflation. That is noise. That is below the detection threshold of most insider threat screening protocols, and whoever designed this payment structure knew it. The foreign adversary's procurement network was not buying a spy. They were buying a clerk, and they priced it accordingly. By month 7 of Quiet Ledger, the FBI and Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control had built a picture of the full network. It was not elegant. It was not the kind of hierarchical cell structure that counterintelligence analysts train on. It was a franchise, a loose, compartmentalized arrangement of commercial intermediaries, each knowing only their adjacent node, all of them converging on a single point of failure, the licensing clerk and the ghost numbers she could generate. The Delaware holding company sat at the American end. 6 shell firms, registered across Delaware, Wyoming, and Nevada, all with nominee directors, all with valid EINs and business bank accounts, all with paper trails that looked, at a quick glance, like ordinary import-export operations, fed purchase orders into the holding company. The holding company submitted export license applications. The applications, with the clerk's assistance, received approvals or amendments that they would not have received under standard review. The approved and amended licenses cleared containers through bonded warehouses. The containers moved. The end buyer was never identified on any form. Every end-use declaration named an intermediate distributor, a machine tool supply company, a precision manufacturing consultancy, an industrial components reseller, none of which, upon examination, appeared to have any actual manufacturing clients. The components reached the intermediate distributors. What happened to them after that was not recorded on any American document. What the intelligence community assessed, based on the specific categories of restricted technology involved, was that the components were consistent with the industrial base requirements of a foreign state military's precision manufacturing modernization program. Consistent with. That is the language of a classified assessment. It is careful language. It is also the kind of language that, once you understand what it is describing, does not leave a lot of room for alternative interpretations. Think about what that means. The components that cleared American bonded warehouses under ghost control numbers, the grinding equipment, the high-tolerance machine tool assemblies, the precision measurement systems, these are not consumer goods. They are not being resold at a markup. They are going somewhere specific, to do something specific. And the American export control system exists precisely to prevent that something specific from happening. The ghost numbers did not just sidestep a bureaucratic process. They moved technology that could directly upgrade a foreign adversary's ability to manufacture components for weapons systems, for military hardware, for capabilities that American defense planners have to account for. 217 licenses, 41 months, and a control number that should have been dead. Something that gets lost in the procedural detail of this case. The licensing system was not hacked. It was not breached. There was no intrusion, no malware, no zero-day exploit. The foreign adversary's network did not need to break into the system. They needed someone already inside it who understood which parts no one was watching closely enough. That is a fundamentally different problem than a cybersecurity problem. You cannot patch a human being. Month 9 brought the first serious obstacle. The Title III wiretap on the clerk's personal cell had been productive, but the communication pattern suddenly went dark for 6 weeks. The clerk stopped using the personal cell entirely. The first broker stopped using the burner. Traffic dropped to near zero. The analyst's team concluded one of two things had happened. Either the subjects had been tipped off, or they had simply cycled to a new communication channel as a matter of operational routine. If it was the former, the entire case was compromised. If it was the latter, they needed to find the new channel fast, because the ledger data showed that a new batch of amended licenses had been submitted during the silence window, which meant the pipeline was still running even without detectable phone communication. They found the new channel in week 7 of the blackout. The first broker had switched to an encrypted messaging application, registered to a device the FBI had not previously identified, a tablet purchased with cash from a retail electronics store in Tysons Corner, Virginia. The new tap required a separate authorization. It took 11 days to obtain, 11 days during which the analyst team watched amended licenses clear in real time and could do nothing to stop them without burning the entire investigation. They let the shipments go. 4 containers. 112 individual line items of restricted components, cleared on ghost numbers, loaded onto vessels at the port of Seattle, en route to an intermediate distributor in a third country. They let them go because stopping them would have told the network that someone was watching, and stopping 4 containers was worth nothing against the possibility of rolling up the entire operation. That decision, to let 4 containers of restricted dual-use technology leave American soil in order to protect the integrity of a counterintelligence investigation, was reviewed at the highest levels of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division and OFAC. It was approved. It was the right call operationally. It was also the kind of call that does not appear in press releases. Month 10. The wiretap on the new tablet confirmed what the ledger analysis had suggested. The operation was not slowing down. It was accelerating. The subjects were processing amended licenses faster in the final quarter than at any previous point in the pipeline's history. The analyst team had a hypothesis. The network was aware, at some level, that the enforcement environment was tightening, that export control agencies had been flagging more anomalies across the industry, and was front-loading as much volume as possible before the window closed. If that hypothesis was correct, the investigation had a narrowing timeline. The network would not run forever. At some point, the subjects would reach a natural pause, a completed tranche, a payment cycle, a communication blackout for reassessment. And if the FBI did not move before that pause, they risked losing physical access to key evidence, losing financial trails as shell accounts were dissolved, and potentially losing the clerk herself if the network decided to extract her or simply cut her loose. The analyst brought the timeline concern to the operations team. The operations team brought it to the United States Attorney. The consensus: they needed a trigger event. Something that would bring all 9 subjects, the clerk, the 2 brokers, and the 6 shell firm principals, into simultaneous, documentable action that could anchor the arrest warrants. They created one. Through a confidential business source, the FBI arranged for the holding company to receive a purchase order, entirely fabricated, entirely controlled, for a specific category of high-precision components that would require an expedited license amendment. The purchase order was designed to be too large to ignore and too attractive to process slowly. It required the clerk to initiate an amendment, the first broker to coordinate with the shell firm network, and the second broker to contact at least 2 of the 6 shell firm principals to arrange the paperwork trail. The purchase order went in on a Monday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, the amendment was in the system. By Thursday, 3 of the 6 shell firm principals had been in phone contact with the second broker. By Friday, the analysts' team had what they needed: a documented, wiretap-confirmed, financially traceable transaction connecting all 9 subjects to the same fraudulent amendment, on the same control cycle, at the same moment in time. The United States Attorney signed 9 arrest warrants that Friday evening. The operations team had 38 hours. 38 hours is not a lot of time to coordinate simultaneous federal arrests across 3 states, 2 federal agencies, and 9 individual subjects who had no knowledge of each other's legal exposure. Every arrest had to happen within the same 60-minute window. If even one subject was arrested early, if word got out before the others were in custody, the remaining subjects would have time to destroy evidence, liquidate shell accounts, or simply disappear. The plan called for 7 arrest teams. 2 of the 6 shell firm principals shared a registered business address in Northern Virginia and were assessed as likely to be together during business hours. They would be taken simultaneously in a single operation. The remaining 7 subjects, the clerk, the 2 brokers, and 4 shell firm principals, were in 4 different states: Virginia, Maryland, New Jersey, and California. The Los Angeles arrest was the logistical anchor. The shell firm principal in California was a naturalized American citizen with a secondary residence in a country that did not have an extradition treaty with the United States. The intelligence assessment was that if he received any warning at all, He had the resources and the documentation to be on a flight within hours. He was the highest flight risk in the network. Every other arrest had to be timed to his. The California team went in first, by 90 seconds, 6:14 a.m. Pacific Time. The Los Angeles field office executed the arrest of the California shell firm principal at his residence in Encino. Dynamic entry, 4 agents, warrant in hand. The subject was in the kitchen. He was in handcuffs before he reached the coffee maker. 6:15 a.m. Pacific Time. The signal went out. 6 teams, 3 time zones, simultaneous execution. 6:15 a.m. Eastern Time. 9:15 a.m. on the East Coast. The arrest team for the licensing clerk arrived at a federal office building in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, where the clerk was already at her desk, logged into the amendment system, processing the morning queue. 2 agents entered through the building's badge access entrance, badged through a second security door, and walked to her workstation. She was placed under arrest without incident. Her workstation was imaged on site. 4 servers in the licensing office's amendment processing infrastructure were seized under a separate warrant, transported under chain of custody protocols to an FBI evidence facility before noon. 6:16 a.m. Eastern Time. The first broker was arrested at his home in McLean, Virginia. The second broker was arrested at a co-working space in Bethesda, Maryland. The Northern Virginia team took both shell firm principals from a shared office suite within 45 seconds of each other. 6:18 a.m. Central Time. 1 shell firm principal in Chicago, arrested at his apartment. 6:21 a.m. Eastern Time. The final shell firm principal, in Newark, New Jersey, was arrested as he entered a parking structure. 11 arrests, 9 subjects. 2 subjects with overlapping operational roles counted separately under distinct charges. 11 pairs of handcuffs, across 4 states and 3 time zones, in 7 minutes. 7 minutes. During the arrests, Treasury's OFAC simultaneously executed administrative freeze orders on 11 financial accounts, 6 business accounts belonging to the shell firms, 2 personal accounts belonging to the brokers, and 3 accounts belonging to the Home Renovation LLC that had been used to pay the clerk. The freezes went into effect at 9:17 a.m. Eastern Time. By the time the last subject was in a federal holding facility, the financial infrastructure of the entire operation was locked. The 4 servers seized from the licensing office contained, in their amendment logs and associated metadata, what the FBI's digital forensics team would later describe as a complete operational record of the fraud. Every ghost number insertion, every amendment, every timestamp, every user credential used to execute the changes. The clerk had not deleted the logs. Whether that was arrogance, oversight, or an assumption that no one would ever cross-reference the expiration database against the amendment metadata is not known. What is known is that the logs were intact. The entire 41-month record of the pipeline, preserved on 4 government servers in a federal evidence facility, available to prosecutors. There is a line in the indictment that reads almost like fiction. The amendment log showed that on the same morning the arrest warrant was signed, the same Friday evening. The clerk had processed 2 additional ghost number amendments, bringing the total to 217. She was still running the pipeline 24 hours before she was arrested. The last ghost number was inserted at 1:43 p.m. on the Friday. The warrant was signed at 6:47 p.m. 4 hours and 54 minutes separated the last fraudulent amendment and the moment the government had legal authority to arrest the person who made it. The indictment, filed in the Eastern District of Virginia, charged all 9 defendants across multiple counts. The clerk faced charges under 18 U.S.C. 554, smuggling goods from the United States, as well as conspiracy to defraud the United States and bribery of a public official. The 2 brokers faced additional charges under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act and conspiracy to violate export administration regulations. 4 of the 6 shell firm principals faced money laundering charges in addition to the export violations. The most serious individual exposure for any single defendant carried a statutory maximum of 20 years. The shell firm network itself, the 6 entities, their bank accounts, their registered assets, was subject to civil forfeiture proceedings initiated simultaneously with the criminal indictments. What could not be indicted was the foreign adversary's procurement apparatus. The handlers, the individuals on the other side of the pipeline who had designed the shell firm structure, recruited the brokers, and arranged the payments to the clerk, were, as best as investigators could determine, operating from outside the United States. One identified individual was assessed to be in mainland China. No extradition request was possible. No arrest was contemplated. The architect of the operation, whoever had built the ghost number methodology into the amendment workflow, walked away. That is how it almost always ends. The domestic network goes down. The foreign handler goes home. The foreign adversary's procurement program files the loss, adjusts the methodology, and looks for the next ghost number in someone else's system. What do you think? Is the answer stricter vetting of cleared personnel, or a fundamental redesign of the amendment workflow itself? That question does not have an obvious answer, and we would genuinely like to know where you would put the resources first. The technology that cleared American ports under those 217 amended licenses, the precision grinding systems, the high-tolerance assemblies, the measurement equipment, is gone. It is not recoverable. The foreign adversary's industrial program now has it, whether it has been integrated into production lines, what it is producing, what those production lines are feeding. None of that is in the public record. What is in the public record is that the components were specifically controlled under the Export Administration regulations because of their potential military end-use applications. They are gone now. They are in the supply chain of a foreign adversary's manufacturing base. That is a loss that does not appear on any ledger, in any form, with any control number. The most surprising part of this case is not the sophistication of the fraud, it is the simplicity of the failure point. 217 amended export licenses routed $1.9 billion in restricted technology to a foreign adversary's industrial network, and the entire mechanism rested on one assumption: that nobody would cross-reference the expiration database against the amendment log in real time. Not a technical assumption. A bureaucratic one. The ghost number method worked not because the system was penetrated, but because the system had a gap between two databases that communicated with each other only during quarterly reconciliation. 41 months is 3.5 quarterly reconciliation cycles. The pipeline fit almost perfectly inside the review gap. Month 14 of Quiet Ledger had brought the arrests, but in month 15, the investigation produced something that was not part of the original case file. A finding that the analyst's team had not expected and that the United States Attorney described, in a closed briefing, as the most concerning element of the entire operation. During the forensic review of the 4 seized servers, the digital forensics team identified a second pattern of anomalous amendments, smaller in scale, different in methodology, using not expired control numbers but altered approval codes embedded in the form's secondary verification field. The altered codes were subtle enough that they had not been flagged by any automated screening. The amendments they were attached to had not yet been correlated with any identified foreign adversary procurement network. They were new, or they were old and had not yet been found. The analyst filed a second case memo. She called it what it was: evidence of a possible parallel pipeline, mechanism partially identified, origin unknown, damage unknown. The question she wrote at the bottom of the memo, a question, not a conclusion, was this: if the expiration database gap enabled 41 months of undetected ghost number insertions, how many other gaps in the amendment workflow exist, and how many of them are already being used? No one in the briefing had an answer. If you would have missed the signal too, subscribe to Federal Casebook and tell us in the comments which thread you would have pulled first: the expiration database gap or the amendment metadata pattern. The network was dismantled. 9 defendants, 9 indictments, 11 financial accounts frozen, 4 servers in federal evidence custody, and a pipeline that had run for 41 months finally closed. But here is what is true: the system did not catch it. The quarterly reconciliation process did not catch it. The automated screening layer did not catch it. The supervisor sign-off chain did not catch it. A junior compliance reviewer, on a Tuesday afternoon, reconciling a ledger she had probably reconciled 50 times before, noticed that a number appeared twice, and that the second appearance was on a form where it had no right to be. She wrote 3 lines in a comment field. 3 lines. That was the margin. Comment yes or no. Would you have flagged that control number or moved on to the next line? 217. The number of export licenses quietly amended to carry ghost control numbers, 41. The number of months the pipeline ran before it was stopped, 9. The number of defendants indicted, 11. The number of financial accounts frozen in a single morning, 4. The number of servers seized before noon on the day of the arrests, $186,000. What they paid the clerk, $1.9 billion. What she delivered, 1. One control number, 1 expiration database gap, 1 compliance reviewer who noticed something that did not add up on a Tuesday afternoon, wrote 3 lines, and kept working. 1 number that should not have existed, and the question that the second case memo asks, and that no one in that closed briefing could answer, is how many other retired numbers are still moving freight right now, and who is counting them?